Okay, good afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting. This is a regular meeting. It is Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. Happy New Year. It is 1:04 p.m. This session is set to go until 2 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board, Vice Chair Ty Menser in the boardroom, as well as Commissioner Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Gary Edwards, and Commissioner Emily Klaus. And today we also in the boardroom, we have interim county manager Robin Campbell, as well as assistant county manager Rob Gelder. We'll start our meeting today with the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for a meeting of January 2nd, 2024, which is canceled. And next is the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for a meeting of January 9th, 2024, which is our first meeting of the year. So we'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Fournier. Could you do the Pledge of Allegiance next week? Perfect. So if that could be updated.
Great.
And then next will be the approval of the Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 agenda. There will be an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
Have no updates at this time.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we'll move on to consent items. There's three. The first one, item 3A. 3B is the approval of the voucher list, which is for the week of December 11th and December 18th.
Yes, we are catching up due to our winter recess on voucher approval for payments that were issued in the last half of December. It is my understanding that no items on either of these lists were for the atrium, and we ought to be done with tenant improvements at the atrium. From here on in, anything related to the atrium would be regular ongoing business. So these are on the consent. Commissioner Edwards, do you have a question about an item?
Yes, please. Because the amount is substantial, 281,000, almost 282,000. And there's quite a breakdown here. And I don't know, if I'm kind of interested. I don't know how much time I can take up on this, but there seems to be duplicate information or billing. I'm not sure of that. And I'm curious, and most of that is going to DM Ventures. I see something is going to Dreebick.
Commissioner Edwards, which page are you on of the voucher list?
Page 40 of 47.
And that is for the December 11th or December 18th?
Well, there's not a date on this page that I pulled out.
Should be, these are for the voucher list for December 11th, and it's page 40 of 47, and it appears to be, I would have to ask exactly what this is.
Okay, well then, how about instead of me tying things up here for this, could I get with you, the next little bit before the 9th or whatever this is up for, and discuss this?
Yes.
I need a little education. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the item A, 3A, or 3B?
Just if Commissioner Edwards, if you learn anything of concern, if you could bring it to our attention at the next week's meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to item 3C from Pretrial Services. And this is a resolution reclassifying position for program manager in the Thurston County Pay and Classification Pay Plan, and moving it to the Thurston County Management and Technical Pay Plan.
Yes, so this action would create a supervisor position within our pretrial services. This supervisor would manage workload, oversee quality assurance, and have direct supervision of staff. It is currently a vacant position. This is one of the reclassifications that was requested in the budget, but was asked to wait until the new year. The salary increase at the very top of the range, the increase is $987 a month. And that is, of course, only if the person were to be hired at the top of the range. And pretrial services will absorb the cost if you should approve this action.
Thank you. And Carrie, I see that you're here. Do you want to add anything else to this item?
Thank you, Carrie Hennon, Director of Pretrial Services. I think Robin summarized it quite well. This was requested through the budget, though it can be absorbed. Then when the board elected not to do reclassifications through the budget process, kind of around the same time this position became vacant, making it a high priority for my department in terms of being able to move forward with filling the vacancy. We really are hopeful that the board will approve this reclassification. Just in terms of a little bit of history, there was in 2021, the size of the pretrial services department increased pretty significantly. There was, I think, some acknowledgement that a supervisor or manager position was needed for the department. That was basically informally managed through a temporary pay increase. So someone was serving in a supervisory type role from 2021 until departing the county in December 2023. And again, now that the position is becoming vacant, it becomes time to sort of figure out what that looks like going forward. And I think Robin summarized so this individual would supervise 5 pretrial officers, be responsible for workload. There's a lot of sort of operational efficiencies in having a supervisor in terms of we kind of touch the same case over time and being able to have some continuity, assure consistency. We have also recently implemented a validated pretrial risk assessment tool. Part of that is an ongoing quality assurance process. So having someone to manage that is really important. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Carrie. And you answered some of the questions I was going to have you answer, which was in terms of background and why this position is important to your department. But I'll go ahead and open it up for questions for the board at this time. Any questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to just make a comment that, and Carrie's made a good argument to me as to the need for this position, but I just wanted to point out that when we have, because you're going to probably hear this a lot, the board's going to hear this a lot about, this, and then, well, we'll absorb, and what that means is essentially we don't increase their budget for this year, but then that higher salary is built into the base for future years. So when someone says they're going to absorb it, what that means is this year, and then it does become a budget increase unless we take some, contrary action. So just be aware of that in terms of the budget impact, because, saying that for a department or an office to say they'll absorb it is only a short-term non-impact on the budget. It is a budget impact for 2025.
Unless we say otherwise.
Well, unless
when you say absorb it, it means this to us.
I looked to Robin. I mean, if we didn't want to, we've done things where we said that it's, I'm trying to think, we've done.
So in Thurston County, in our budget process, is all positions are fully funded. If an officer department comes before the board and asks for a reclassification that costs more money, they will absorb the cost this year, but essentially salaries are zero-based. So when the, personnel budget's calculated for the following year, it's based on whatever the classification is at that point in time. So pretrial services as an example, once Carrie hires, they'll bear the higher cost this year, but their budget will include additional money for the higher classification from next year on.
There's been weird stuff. The one I was thinking of is when, like, there was a year where the sheriff asked for additional overtime to the budget, and then we got to the end of the year, and it was a question of whether the board had approved that to be on, like, as a new amount for overtime, or just for that 1 year. So we had to go back and figure out what the board's intent was. That was during 2020. And there are situations like that. But in general, if it's an ongoing position and we reclass it, it gets built, as Robin just described. I just wanted you guys to understand that, because it's not like someone can just say, oh, they absorbed in the budget. Oh, well, then we don't have to worry about it. They're gonna find savings somewhere else. Well, yeah, for this year, but not for the next year. So it's just something to think about if it's a borderline call. I mean, this one, I think some.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I don't know if you can see us or not, so I didn't want to interrupt. But, anyway, following up on Commissioner Mentzer's comments, also it cuts back on the reversion from at the end of the year. That's another piece. But how long has this been vacant, and how many dollars are we talking about? And which funding source does it come from?
So it's only been vacant, in my understanding, since the fall, late fall. December. So
Just
very short time that it's
recent,
been
okay.
vacant.
Okay,
The increase is just under $1,000 a month, so
so a
a
total
little
would be
under
12.
12,000 for the year. And your other
The
question.
funding
The
source?
funding source is general fund.
Is there any way that this could be other than general fund? And I guess for my seatmates, and I know Commissioner Mentzer's had this concern as well, my big thing is the general fund, because that's the restricted fund that we have the hardest time working out of. It's only allowed, we can cover everything out of the general fund, but we can't out of these other funds. And so we're generally short in the general fund. And so is there any other fund that this can come out of other than the general fund? And if so.
Can I speak to that a little bit?
Sure.
Sorry. So in terms of pretrial services absorbing this particular reclassification, the way in which we will offset is by me spending more of my time on treatment sales tax eligible activities. Having a strong individual in a supervisor role does free me up to spend time on the 35 to 40% of my department that is TST funded. So to Commissioner Mentzer's point, like, yes, of course it's an ongoing cost to the county, but that ability to offset some of my time to treatment sales tax eligible activities, I do see as sort of an ongoing offset, if that makes sense. Robin, I don't know if you would agree with that characterization, but.
Not really, because it's all county money.
Sure.
It's still gonna cost more in
It's all
some
county
fund.
money, but to Commissioner Edwards' question about
Yes.
funds first.
True.
And two other points, if I could. One being that the board had previously approved this going as part of the decision process. But it was when, if I recall correctly, when the decision or direction was made to not do any reclassifications, then it was reversed at that point in
We
time.
hit a slippery slope with reclassifications and
And then
pulled back
second,
on any of them. You will see a lot of them come forward, and Maria and I were talking just earlier today about how we will bring forward reclassifications this year because, well, as you saw, there were quite a few requests in the budget, and those offices and departments still feel the need for the reclass. So it's all gonna depend on how we roll out the comp and class study, which is a much bigger conversation, but this particular reclassification has been in the works for quite some time.
And the
Can
other-
I add to that, Robin?
Sure.
So it has been in the works for quite some time, and we unfortunately lost the person who was in there before, who was kind of leading the PSA. And I think this reclassification is a little bit different than the rest because I feel like the PSA is at stake, right? And the burden that it's going to place on both Carrie and her staff if this reclassification is not approved, and being able to hire for that position. And I feel the fact that the board has already committed that, we are going to continue with the PSA, and not having this position could mean that there will be delays just because of the work burden on it. I'm really going to ask the board to really consider this reclassification a little bit different than the rest, just because of the contract that we all said, that to the commitment that we already made in terms of the PSA. So I think it is a little bit different, and the value of the position, as Carrie has stated, it is very important in being able to hire for that specific position and bringing someone in to be able to kind of continue on with that program.
Do we have the expansion introduction session with pretrial services before the meeting on the 9th? Because that might help give,
Today.
okay,
Yeah,
that
I
might
think
help
it's
us
coming
with
later
the
today.
whole concept of the PSA and the additional, trying to flesh out what Commissioner Mejia was describing there.
Right.
Is there any chance that this, when I talk about some other fund, we have a jail tax fund, sales tax fund that goes in, and we use that sometimes. And what we're doing with this position is trying to cut back on the number of inmates housed in our jail.
So we're talking
Would
about
that be
the
too far of a
detention.
stretch?
It is too far of a stretch, I'm afraid. The detention sales tax is restricted to operation and construction costs in a correctional facility. While the work that pretrial services does is related to whether or not someone stays in the jail, it's really not the operational cost of the jail. And that particular fund, recall, we needed to reduce expenditures in that fund to keep the fund solvent in the next few years. So now is not the time to be shifting money to that particular fund.
So I guess I'm hearing from the chair, she's advocating for this at least, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I am. Carrie, I wanted to ask, you said you would be able to absorb this in 2024. If it's in terms of maybe funding in 2025, is this something that you could possibly absorb as well in 2025 without raising your maintenance level budget?
Yes, I believe, when we put this forward as a budget request for the biennium, we had it as a $0. We had modeled it out for the biennium as an absorb, as basically a $0 budget request.
So we can work
Thank
with
you.
pretrial services to see what that might look like.
Okay.
I mean, they very well may hire within the prior range. So it wouldn't be an increase in cost at all. It's just at the top of the range. If you were to assume that someone was at the top of the range and you hire the new person at the top of the new range, that would create that disparity in cost, but, I mean, you're not even necessarily doing that. So let's see what they hire at, and then we can work with Carrie to bring the budget into alignment.
I'm good.
Okay, any more questions on this item? Okay, we'll move on to department items. Item 4A, Central Services, and this is a contract award for the voter registration center.
Yes, this item is to award the contract for construction and remodel of the voter registration center at Mottman. The county received 11 bids, and we are very pleased to report that the low bidder is $300,000 under the engineer estimates. So that helps keep this this project on budget. And that amount also includes alternatives such as the running the sidewalk from the bus stop to the building, which is an item that the auditor got a grant for. This project, should you approve this award today, is currently on track. And we should have the voter registration center remodel completed by August of 2024. So this is very good news.
And that's the big push that we're shooting. Right?
That is the big push that, you know, the auditor, of course, would have liked it done sooner, but it at least gets it open prior to the presidential election. The ballot processing centers, completely different project, and you'll hear more about that on another day, but this one is moving along well.
Is this the one where we have
Thank you.
$100,000 gap?
Yeah, and the 300,000 under the engineer estimate helps us get a whole lot closer to what we have.
That's what I was hoping.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the lease amendment extension between Thurston County and TCOM 911.
Yes, I received notice this morning that this item will be moved to the agenda on January 30th, so we will have more information at that time.
Okay, so then that item will be stricken off our agenda for January 9th.
Correct.
Okay, moving on to item from the Commissioner's Office, item 5A is the 2024 election of offices for the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank
And
you.
I'm actually going to ask that this item be moved right after consent agenda. That way there can be the transition of officers right at the beginning rather than kind of like in the middle.
Yeah, that's fine. We can certainly move this up. This also should be the 2024 election of officers. So we're missing an R out of the word office. This item is, as the board discussed at your November 30th planning session, where currently Commissioner Wentzer is nominated as the chair and Commissioner Fournier is the vice chair for 2024.
Any questions?
Nope.
Okay. So following that action, I will be passing on the baton to Commissioner Menser. Okay. Item 5B, the 2024 Commissioners' Representation and Assignments on Boards and Commissions.
Yes, this is also from your November 30 planning session. And this is the roster of commissioners who will represent the county at the various boards and commissions.
Questions?
Sounds pretty quiet.
Okay. And then item C is the services agreement with King County to fund Switch is On campaign.
Yes, this item was discussed at your briefing on November 29th. There is a 3-county and 3-city consortium, King, Pierce, and Thurston County, and the cities of Seattle, Tacoma, and Olympia, their county seats. For the, this is for the Switches On campaign and a decarbonization navigator platform. So this item is both for software and consumer education on home electrification and energy efficiency. The total price of the project is $225,000, and the Thurston County share is only $25,000 of that. And it will be paid from money that is currently earmarked for climate change initiatives. And Rebecca is here to add more information or answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Rebecca, anything you'd like to add?
Robin did a great job. Thank you. Thank you all. I have more information if you have questions. I will add that I included the scope of work so you can see what will be delivered for the contribution of $25,000. King County is holding the contract with the consultant to deliver this web platform. It's both, I guess I will tell you a little bit more about it. It's both a web platform, switcheson.org, which exists currently in other states, and they would be branding a new website for Washington. And this will also serve to meet our needs regionally, but as well as serving as a pilot for a potential statewide energy navigator program that's being considered in the upcoming legislative session. So we'll be able to be at the front end of that and help test this educational resource for our residents, which has been selected by the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative, the county and the 3 cities, as one of our priority regional initiatives. So by going in on this bigger regional effort and pooling our funds with the other counties and cities, we'll be able to deliver this part of our priority initiative at a lower cost and higher quality than we would be able to do if we were to go it alone. So I think it's a great deal, and I'm excited about it. I'll answer any questions you have.
Madam Chair.
Questions? Go ahead.
Yes. So the 25,000 is coming out of what we've already set aside. But it sounded like there's more costs yet to come. But through this program, maybe we'll get a break or get some efficiencies or something like that. So how much money are you looking at for the future benefit that we're gonna have to have an expenditure?
Building out the
Yeah,
local
how
campaign.
much are we talking
Sure.
about to do what? That's what my concern is, not the 25,000.
Okay, yeah, there's a few different moving parts, so trying to separate because this regional initiative is starting now, so we're able to jumpstart, and you understand this 25,000 is towards what's in this scope of work that is shared among the 3 counties and cities for all of our residents. Beyond that, with my colleagues in the 3 local cities, we are jumping into a planning process for a local campaign. So what we're getting with Switches On is like the foundation of where we can put any additional incentives that are yet to be determined because we're just starting the planning phase. And as part of that, I'll be writing up a grant application for the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. That's $81,000. It's a formula grant. It's due in April, so I'll be writing that up. Hopefully, everything will be fine. We'll get those funds, which will be allocated directly to augment incentives or to provide supplemental incentives for heat pumps or other energy efficiency improvements or possibly to do energy audits of people's own homes. So all of that, those specific decisions are what we will be making with the committee, the Climate Mitigation Committee, in the coming months. But we have, to answer your question, $81,000 of a federally allocated block grant to go to those incentives.
Will this be in conjunction with, say, our service provider, just say Puget Power is our service provider? And oftentimes they do things like energy audits, maybe help you replace windows or do some of the things you're referring to. Will this be a duplicate of that type of effort, or will you coordinate with those type of entities?
We will coordinate with them. It'll be broader than the utility. Utility has their programs and they provide information on their website, but, really to change people's behavior, they need to see things on a variety, in multiple places. They say it takes like 7 times of hearing a message to actually, influence behavior. This would be a broader campaign that's not just information, it's also going to be events. They have a chef-fluencer event where they bring a professional chef to do. Chef-fluencer, that's sort of.
I love that.
Switches on, like a coined term. They train professional chefs to be messengers on using electric induction stoves, and that gets people in the door, because what's a better way to get people in the door than food? And so they have food at the events and use those trusted messengers to help raise awareness and inspire change. So this web platform that's part of the overall campaign will provide an incentive finder as part of it. It has federal incentives that are coming down from the Inflation Reduction Act that are just being released in this second quarter of this year at the state level and are also available at the federal level. It will have the Puget Sound Energy rebates, any that exist. Right now they do have an electrification rebate, but it's only 10,000. It's like a pilot program, so it'll only provide the rebates for 10,000 residents throughout all of Puget Sound Energy's service area. So by building out a local program, we'll be able to help many more residents. I hope I answered your question. I'm sort of all over the place. But the point is, it's a bigger campaign that brings together what the utility provides as well as what's available on the federal level, all in one place to make it really clear and easy for the consumers.
I don't know that you can answer all those questions right now because there's too many variables, but I see where you're going. Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for Rebecca? Okay. Moving on to Community Planning and Economic Development, item 6A is to set a public hearing for A-25 Forest Land Conversion Code Update.
So this action will invite, thank you, Rebecca. This action will invite public comment on the A-25 Forest Lands Conversion Code Update. This code update was developed with significant input and outreach from community organizations. The Planning Commission held 2 work sessions and a public hearing, and they recommend adoption of this code update. The Board of County Commissioners held work sessions on November 2nd and 29th, and this simply brings it to a public hearing. And this is one of the items that, I'm gonna go out on a limb, that you can move, on its own. So it's not part of the big code update at the end of the year.
Thank you. And we have Ashley as well as Dana here to answer any questions. Anything? No? Okay.
I have one question. Okay. And the Planning Commission made the recommendation, and was that a unanimous recommendation?
It was a 5-2 vote to adopt.
But this is just for a hearing.
This is for public hearing.
Okay.
Item 6B is the request for proposals for Thurston County Working Lands Conservation Strategy.
Right, so this is a request for proposals for professional services for a consultant to work with county staff to develop a working lands conservation strategy. This would include recommendations for programs such as the transfer of development rights, purchase of development rights, an update to our Conservation Futures program, and updates to our open space tax incentives. The proposal is to use grant funds to pay for this consultant service, and this is a multi-year contract that would continue based on available funding.
Questions?
Just one.
Go ahead.
On the transfer of development rights, we've had that in place for quite a while. Has it been used at all?
I don't know. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you. Yeah, so we do have a transfer development rights program. We were one of the first counties to adopt one. It has not been used very much.
And my question is, what's the benefit of that and why not? That, I mean, it just isn't practical. We have other regulatory things that conflict with it. What's the deal? I just hate to keep moving forward with stuff that doesn't seem to be working.
Well, so the
Are you gonna make it
intention of
better?
the grant is to look into why it hasn't been working. So there are a number of farmers who would like to use the program. However, a transfer has to occur. So even if there is a farmer who wants to sell development rights, you need a buyer to buy those development rights. And those buyers, the way the codes are written, we have not historically had a lot of buyers. So looking at updates to those codes to try to incentivize the buyer side.
Commissioner Bernier, you have a question on that?
Can you back up and tell me what he's talking about, like I'm a dumb fireman?
Oh, no, that's fine. So the transfer development rights, it's essentially intended as more of a private market system for farmers in our long-term ag zone to sell their development rights to developers, mostly in our North County cities. And the way our current codes are written, it's really to incentivize. So if a developer wants to build more units than they would otherwise get to develop, they could do that by purchasing development rights. I think to date, less than 10 development rights have been sold. However, we've got 50 plus that have been certified. And so we definitely have sellers. We don't have buyers. And so we're looking at using these grant funds to try to figure that out. How do we incentivize?
Why would you say mostly in North County?
Oh, the way it's written is sending sites are your farms in our long-term agriculture zone. Receiving sites are very specific zoning districts in our North County cities, and then there's one receiving zoning district in Grand Mound. So,
There's zoning districts that you have to be.
You'd have to be in. It's fairly complex, and different counties have been really creative with like how do you incentivize the purchase of those development rights by private developers. So King County is probably the most successful.
If you think of King County, like this is where the model makes perfect sense. Like there's extremely high real estate values in the urban core. So if the developer can build twice as many units under the zoning district, they can make a lot of money. And then there's a good market to buy those rights from somebody. And then but then you have these areas that you want to keep open space, which is hard in King County when there's such a population. So you protect those by transferring the people's ability to develop in the more rural area, intensify development. There's a financial incentive on both sides. So then if you so King County works great. And then as you go to smaller and smaller counties, it becomes harder and harder. And like a lot of things, Thurston's right on that bubble where it's like, I intended this half-day workshop on why this program wasn't working well in Thurston County. And a lot of it, I think, has to do, it's really not on our side. Our side's pretty well organized. It's about the cities you know, in the zoning, and they haven't, and is there enough demand for higher densities where they can't? Now, I would imagine that some of their missing middle and state laws and stuff, doesn't that kind of undermine in a way, because now they can do greater density, and they don't.
Or they're required to.
Don't need to purchase development rights, like, you know, so in a sense, like, those policies may be sort of undermining, I don't know.
I think there's a lot of room for discussion. There's a lot of latitude within state law to structure your transfer development rights program to like fit the needs of your individual county. And so we've been collecting those ideas. Snohomish has tried some really creative things in the past. They're looking at updates right now. So I think this is really, this grant and working with a consultant team is that opportunity for us as a community to figure out how we might be able to design a program that works better for our agricultural operators. One of the exciting things about the grant is that even to get it, we put together an applicant coalition that included the City of Olympia and City of Tumwater. So they're part of the applicant team, and so they will be at the table as we discuss any of these ideas around transfer development rights, and are committed to putting in place, you know, changes if they're identified in their own local codes.
We maybe set some time aside so you can teach me about this more.
Oh yeah, no, I'd be happy to.
And it connects to our agricultural zoning, right? Because
It
Should, yeah.
when we were talking about taking agricultural zoning and making it long-term ag, and, you know, that could financially detriment potentially somebody that got their zoning changed, but
Yeah.
if they could turn around and sell their development
Yeah,
rights.
the biggest complaint is that you're taking away my right to
Yeah.
subdivide and develop my farm, and that's my retirement plan, and you're changing the value of my property. But this,
This is a way to get around it if it's working.
yeah, this
Or
this
to
changes
mitigate
that
that.
argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a bit.
And it's also something that people can opt into, right? It's not necessarily treated as it's placed upon you as a requirement, although it can be used as that kind of tool.
But the long-term ag zoning is placed upon you. That's not opted in.
And that was one of the reasons that Thurston County was one of the first counties to adopt the transfer development rights program. It was a follow-up to the rezoning of land into our current long-term ag zoning. Unfortunately, it just hasn't been a tool that has been as effective for farmers as they would like, so.
So to bring this back to the agenda item.
Sorry.
This is why of course, but this is why bringing this consultant on board that would help us to improve this strategy and others is an important thing for the county to do. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're okay. I was wondering, so I heard when this item was first being explained that it would be until funds run out for this RFP, basically. So what are your goals that you're hoping to achieve before that funding runs out? What would this consultant provide to us, hopefully before the end of the project?
Yeah, so it's going to be a collection of tools really for the board to consider. So some of them will be policy and code recommendations. There will be recommendations or information regarding additional funding mechanisms that the county might not be using currently. Also, sort of a matrix of working lands conservation priorities by those different conservation goals. So there'll be a lot of materials or deliverables that will come out of this RFP, and it's structured as such. And then those will lead into policy decisions from the board in a lot of cases.
Awesome.
Where's the grant money coming from again?
It is it's an EPA grant, and locally it's referred to as the Habitat Strategic Initiative Lead Grant. And it was a really competitive grant to get, and so this is one of the only land use or policy grants that was issued.
Can you repeat that, what it's called?
Habitat Strategic Initiative Lead, HSIL. So they're also excited to see the outcomes of this and hoping that other counties will be able to utilize some of the tools and information.
I think they just picked 4 words.
I know.
We haven't used that one yet.
Yeah, it is a mouthful.
How does this tie in with what the legislature is gonna be working on this year? on affordable housing and things like ADUs, zoning, different things like that. Are we in step with what they're coming up with or where they're headed on this, so we don't end up doing something contrary to what's coming out of the legislature?
The nice thing is that the same group of people internally that'll be working on this are also working on the comp plan update. So even if the state isn't coordinating necessarily across departments, we will be coordinating and making sure that they're all integrated.
Okay, I just want to do a time check. It's 1:49. We have quite a few items to review, so just as a reminder, we will be reviewing this next week, so if you have any pressing items that you'd like to ask, we have next week to ask those. So moving forward with emergency services, item 7A is a resolution to purchase night vision binocular system and basic accessory kits, night vision goggles.
This item is being pulled and shifted to a future agenda, so this will not be on for next week.
Okay, moving on to item 7B is to execute contract for year 23 emergency management performance grant.
This item is to accept grant money, federal funds that flow through the Washington State Military Department. Emergency management uses these funds for planning, education, and outreach. And not sure if the total increase is 162,000 or if that's the increase amount.
Sorry, no, I'm sorry, I was agreeing with you. It's the total amount.
All right.
Okay, questions? Okay, moving on to information technology, item 8A is the renewal of Microsoft support agreement for technical assistance.
This is our annual agreement for technical support of the Microsoft systems that the county relies on. It is a sole source contract, which was reviewed and approved by the internal auditor.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, all right.
Sherry?
Plus to doing business?
Yep.
Public Health and Social Services, item 9A is to approve amendment number 1 of the Development Disabilities Administration County Program Agreement.
This is a contract that the county holds with the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services. They pass money to the county, and this will increase the grant by $1.4 million, which will be used for training and assistance to people who have developmental disabilities, mainly to assist them in being successful at jobs.
Questions? Okay. Moving on to item 9B, Treatment Sales Tax Community Grant Awards.
This is the TST Community Grant Awards. The board held a work session on November 29th on this topic and had many follow-up conversations. This final award gives funding to Providence Southwest Washington Foundation, Interfaith Works, and the Family Support Center of South Sound for services to people with behavioral health issues.
Any questions? Okay. Moving on to Public Works, item 10A, execute license and indemnity agreement number 23-113466 for a private septic line.
So this item is to enter into an agreement with a private property owner who is installing a septic system where the line will cross a county right-of-way. And this is in accordance with Thurston County Code, which requires a private property owner to sign an agreement with the county. It is so that the property owner takes responsibility for anything related to this work. And this agreement has been approved by the prosecutor's office.
Questions?
No.
Okay.
You guys got off the.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
After that, we will have our standing items, and at 3:45, there's a Board of Health special meeting. So that will conclude the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for our meeting of January 9th. Now, it is 1:54. We do have some commissioner items.
So we can just run through these very quickly. They're mainly updates. Rob, do you want to talk about the first one?
Oh, can I
Oh,
just,
I'm so sorry.
Going back to the meeting of January 9th, 2024, I'm going to request that the Martin Luther King proclamation be done on January 9th. There are several events that are going to be taking hold over the weekend, and I think it would be great to do it on January 9th instead of doing it after the holiday when some of these events
Okay.
take place. Is that okay with the board? Yeah, okay. That was it, sorry, passing it to you.
All right, go ahead.
And relative to the Board of Health agenda review, given the makeup of the Board of Health, and now with the Board of County Commissioners, the recommendation is to move forward with just not having that come to the Board of County Commissioners to review the agenda. It will be available to all board members, just like our community members, in advance of that time. But the plan would be for staff in PHSS to work directly with the chair of the Board of Health, as well as most likely the vice chair, once they're selected.
Questions?
So then, January calendar, I just wanted to say that, this calendar for this month, we're still following the old model. You may have seen the, email from me regarding the new structure for the calendar, and this is the layout. I'll send this out. We'll talk more about this at the planning session. But a lot of items that you see on the calendar this much are for, commissioner expansion introductions is what we called them. They're mainly for offices and departments to come and tell the board what they do. So mainly for our new commissioners, but they may be of interest to the whole board, because we've asked departments to talk not only about what they do, but also what their goals are for 2024 and what they need from the board in support to achieve those goals. So there may be some that are of interest to you. You may hear something that you weren't completely aware of. And then there are two in particular, if you look at this hot topics list that I gave you, regional corrections will be part of the introduction that Leah does on January 10th, and the prosecutor at his expansion introduction session on January 24th will talk to the board about having attorneys at board meetings and work sessions. So you may want to specifically attend those two, even if you don't attend all the rest. And then this list that I included in your packet, these are all the things where staff heard you say, let's talk about that in January. Well, there's obviously a lot more than we can cover in January or even in the first quarter. So one of the things you see is that at the first monthly planning session in January, on January 11th, we'll have a conversation about board priority and goals for 2024. And much like we had a short list for the last 4 months of last year, we'll talk about what is it that you want to achieve and where do you want staff to really spend their time and effort in 2024. What do you want to see passed by the end of this year? So we'll spend the biggest chunk of your planning session on the 11th. On that discussion, we'll talk about all of these things. If you have more things for me to add to that list, please bring them forward. Yes, Wayne.
And I was reminded of this, and I've been thinking about it, but when I looked at quarterly all-staff meetings, the first thing is Narcan training. Narcan is readily available in our community, and it's it's given out by law enforcement, it's given out by mental health professionals, it's given out by just about everyone in the community except the folks you'd think have it the most available, and that's our BLS providers in the fire departments, all the EMTs. They're not allowed to administer it. And it seems a little counterintuitive. I know there's, the MPD has an argument that he's given in defense of not allowing BLS providers to administer Narcan. I think it's more of a philosophical and social argument than it is a medical argument. I'm not exactly sure where the authority of the Board of Health comes in, or the authority of the commissioners over Medic One comes in. But I think it's a big discussion that we should be having. I've heard reports from EMTs that are arriving, they arrive first, they're on fire engines. There's some places in the county where, the medic unit might be coming out of Olympia, but they're in Bald Hills. So there's a lag time, and the EMTs are relying on police officers to get there, and they have to ask the police officers, or in some cases, the bystanders, to administer medications that our EMS providers cannot.
I got it on the list.
Okay.
So
All right.
we'll discuss it later. I don't mean to cut you off, but
I
we're
was
just
done.
in the time.
Thank you.
Perfect,
So,
okay, so
Just
then,
very quick update, county manager recruitment. We have interviews that are getting scheduled on January 26th, which is the soonest this month I could get them on the calendar. All commissioners will be included in that, and then clerk of the board. I believe we're having interviews. Commissioner Mejia and Rob and I will be the interview panel. We have 4 candidates that we're interviewing, I believe, on January 8th. And those are my updates.
go ahead.
See
I got an item I gotta
Yeah.
get through, but
okay, I'm just interested in, do we have a list of those candidates that are gonna be interviewed for county manager?
Yes, and I will send those out in an email. We don't want to make them public yet.
Okay, that's fine. As long as we get a chance, just take a look at them.
Yes.
It's only
you will know
4
who
out of
they were.
40.
Yep, the committee that did the selection picked the top 4.
I just wanted to let folks know you should have gotten a copy of a letter I sent to Board of Natural Resources after we got our letter on the 19th of December. The parcels that we requested didn't get included in the program, and 2 of them are up for cut tomorrow, for consideration of auction, or however they call that. So I went ahead, consistent with our previous direction I had from the board, I just sent it out myself. I said at the end of the letter, although I write on behalf of myself and not the full board, because we're on a holiday break, this request is consistent with multiple requests from our entire board. Just basically reiterating that the 2 parcels that are up tomorrow for consideration were included on our list of the highest importance in terms of having old, complex, structurally mature, carbon-dense forest in Cabell State Forest. And I included, the new commissioners can look at the letters I included as exhibits, because they kind of give a little bit of the recent history of this. And we're just asking that they not cut them while we can, because we have a standing invitation both from Commissioner Franz and from the DNR generally in that 19th letter to work with us on a strategy that reflects our county's values. So if they cut the trees that we're trying to protect before they work with us in that strategy, that's bad faith, from my opinion, and we really need to speak loudly and with one voice. So if I'd had one more day, I would have asked the board to all sign this letter, but it had to be sent in by noon today, so I had to get it in. I just wanted you to know what I did.
I'm planning to go and provide testimony tomorrow, so I will make reference to your letter, Commissioner Menser.
We're not the only one. There's other organizations that have weighed in already in writing. There's litigation that's being contemplated that this board may be asked to discuss or consider, but that's for another day.
Well, I guess I will ask the board at this time, is the board okay with me talking on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners tomorrow? as the chair still and highlighting
Yeah, absolutely.
the
Thank
letter.
you.
Okay, so then, tomorrow I'll talk on behalf of the board and highlight that and, make sure and highlight the letter that, Commissioner Menzer filed today. Okay, 2:04. Welcome back. Okay, we are adjourned with agenda